Welcome back on Dynamod. Today I want to propose you a video about how I assembled and painted my first model, the Banshee renewed one, creating a playlist of videos relating about the tricks that I use to realize such type of composition and model at the end. And about this, I want to remind you that in the description you can find also the video about the model that I'm referring and the idea that I had. So I decided to create a sort of idea, so I sketched what I was ideaing about having the final effect so that I could have an idea to refrain about creating such models. So I decided to make a sort of efforts to planning about what I wanted to realize. And here you can see the sketches about, not good, but here it is as I draw. And so I decided to create the coffin, the paper one that you can find in the description, the realization and the painting one. And from the project of the working on Calicotarium, I taken the hand that has to keep the coffin high, so that I combined. And about the base, I decided to move from a 25mm one to a 32mm one, because I needed a bigger base to put on the everything that I need, because otherwise it will be too, I can say, little the sustain that I needed about. Then I realized the trick about the switching tabs and I put on it some of the bits that I haven't used coming from the set of the common throne that were perfect to realize the idea that I had in mind. So I can wear the gloves and start to give the black primer of the Vallejo to my miniature. I used the black for green forest of the scale color 75 so that I was able to paint the tissues with a darker color so that I was able to move from darker color to brighter ones. And the Rackert Flash base of the Citadel to begin paint the base to the ethereal color. Eventually, if you're interested about, you can find the video related in the description about how to paint ethereal colors. Then again the black green forest of the scale color 35 to make a sort of highlight with the base itself to reinforce the color and correct eventually mistakes that I done using the color of the Rackard Flash so that I was able to adjust everything. And then I used the violet of the scale color 75 to paint as base the strips of the tendages of the model so that I had a color that was a good one to match the green. Then I used the erratic green of the scale color 75 to use it as highlight about the tendages themselves so that I was able to make it brighter as color using as an enforcement about the base that I used. And then the green ink of the Vallejo to blend everything together, the colors of the tendages and about the spectral effect that I was able to use so perfect way. And then I use the Dubai Brown of the scale color 75 to paint those laces to keep firm the bones on the model itself. And then I use the Agrax F shade, a shade of the Citadel, to give the volume about the bones of the models. And then I used the net blue of the Vallejo and the magic blue again of the Vallejo itself to paint the strips of the tendages so that I was able to give the depth and the light of those parts of the model. I used then the violet of the scale color 75 to go and make the progression from the green base of the tendages to the brighter color, so I decided to move from the green to the violet. So I used the fuchsia of the scale color 75 and I mixed it with the violet so that I could realize a middle tone to use, and so moving, making a progression about this so that I could realize little change and make that I realized a color to use so that I could move step by step from darker to brighter color, so to highlight the tendages themselves. And then the Druky Violet shade of the Citadel to blend the various tones of the violet together. And then I used the Screaming Skull layer of the Citadel to make that color about bones on the part of the bones that are on the model, so that I had, using the technique of the tipping, so only make tips on the different bones, so that I was able to make these bones visible on the model. I wanted to make the ethereal effect on the model a bit stronger, so I used the erratic green of the scale color 75 to make a sort of specific highlights on some part of the model, so that I had a sort of highlighting on certain pieces. Then I could have a sort of stronger effect using such vibrant green on the model. And then I taken the sunset purple of the scale color 75 and again the fuchsia of the scale color 75, and I created layers on the tendages of the model. This was to improve the highlighting of the model, and I started from the, I can say, darker color, and I started also to mix the layering so that I could then move and make it brighter and brighter, so moving to highlighter more and more the color of such part of model. And then I used again the ink of the Vallejo to blend together the new highlight green color ethereal one that I realized for such models, so that it was completely blended together and perfect to see. And so the upper part of such model it has ended. Now I can simply switch the Banshee or another model from another base to this one and vice versa. And the next thing about this is that I can personalize quite a lot, but the model is not finished. So now we have to put such part on the base and put everything together so that everything is put in a way that it's usable. And to perfect the base I needed a tombstone, so I used the set that I bought from the Green Stuff World, and I selected a tombstone that it was useful for my project. And then I taken some PVA, Vinavi or similar glues, doesn't mind, and some tinfoil. This is useful to create some way to personalize a sort of mask to both stabilize, create volume, and having less material to cover it, so to use about personalizing the terrain you are using on. Then I use a driller to put together everything, making a drilling on the base and on the hand that has to be connected to the base itself, and pinning them together. So I use a piece of a clipper so that I was able to put everything together using some glue. In my case I use some attack, and the same Lottite, attack or so on I used to put in position the tombstone that I selected so that it was perfect balanced once that I positioned the model on the base itself. To paint the tombstone I use some black primer and the stonewall grey of the Vallejo, and then I use to create the mount, so to perfect the snow weathering effect always of the Vallejo, and I combined everything together using the Agrax Earthshade shade of the Citadel. I really love such effect. I use it in a lot of options because I like how it's the final effect, and I think that it's a trick that I use quite often with different options, so that my playlist about the bases it's always full of such trick, but the final effect it's always amazing myself. Before to put everything together, I decided to protect the different parts of the model with the matte protective one. This is a nice thing to do because it helps you to prevent that the color being ruined when you manipulate the model itself. I wanted to make a sort of ethereal effect also on the base, so I use again the snow of the Vallejo and some ink of the Vallejo, green ink one, and so I moved in the way that I positioned where there was the option that it was on the base, reflecting a bit of the ethereal part of the model, and it was also useful in the way that you had the option that with such snow one you was able to also make a bit firmer the contact between the mod itself and the base, so it was a double effect, painting and stabilizing the, I can say, assembly way. To create the dismembering of the test that I've written for this specific model that you can find in the special video that I released, and this is the way. So I decided to use some bones and a skull that comes from the set of the skeletons and the goose, so that I could use some bones so that there will be the remains of the lady talking about. And when I glued, there was a problem that there was a bit of glue leaking. So I decided to use a bit of paper and with some pincer to purify the parts that was exposed about the glue, and a bit of skin skull after everything to create that bone effect that was perfect, so that using again the tipping, so little painting on the bones on the exposed part, so that I had a nice effect to talk about the bones. Eventually, remember that you can use also the Agrax Earthshade again of the Citadel. It's a color that I really love, to make that you can combine everything so that you can adjust eventually to bright color and so on. So it's a nice way. And then I used the attack Clotit or what you want about, and I glued the coffin that I realized on the model so that I was able to put everything together. It is the last passage that I realized, because otherwise it would be a bit problematic to move around the model and so on. But the final effect is something that I really loved, and it's amazing, in my opinion, obviously. So, from Dynamod, it's everything. I invite you to put a like on this video, to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell, and to comment this video if you are interested in something about this video or you want to suggest me some arguments for other videos. I hope to see you again to the next time.